The wake-up call in 2025. Alex was a young professional living in a modern city. He had a decent job, a comfortable apartment, and all the things people call success. Yet every month something strange kept happening. No matter how much he earned, his bank account ended up close to empty. He often told himself it was because of rising prices. But one quiet night, as he scrolled through his bank app, he realized the truth. The problem wasn't the world around him. It was him. Small, careless spending had become a habit. Morning coffee, quick food deliveries, and endless online orders. They all looked harmless. But together they were stealing his future. Alex leaned back in his chair, staring at the glowing screen. A feeling of frustration mixed with determination filled his mind. He knew it was time to take control of his life. He wanted to save, not just survive. That night became his turning point. He promised himself that starting tomorrow, every dollar would have a purpose. He didn't know where to begin, but he knew he couldn't stay the same. The journey to financial freedom had started, quietly in a small apartment with one honest realization. Track every dollar. The next morning, Alex woke up earlier than usual. His mind still echoing with last night's realization, he made a cup of black coffee and sat down with his phone in hand, ready to face what most people fear. The truth about where his money was going. He downloaded a budgeting app and connected it to his bank account. Within seconds, colorful charts appeared on the screen, showing his spending patterns from the last 3 months. What he saw shocked him. There were hundreds of small transactions at coffee shops, delivery services, streaming subscriptions, and random online purchases, all adding up to a frightening total. It wasn't the big expenses that were hurting him. It was the small, invisible ones that slipped away every day without him noticing. As Alex stared at the data, he felt embarrassed, but also strangely empowered. It was like seeing the enemy for the first time. He now understood that awareness was the first step to control. He decided to track every expense manually from that day forward. Every coffee, every bus ticket, every single dollar spent would be written down in his app. The first week felt hard and uncomfortable, but soon he began to enjoy it. Each entry gave him a sense of responsibility, a sense of control. It was no longer just money. It was a reflection of his discipline. For the first time, Alex was not a victim of his spending. He was the observer, and that changed everything. The 24-hour rule weeks passed, and Alex's awareness grew stronger. But despite his new discipline of tracking every expense, temptation still followed him everywhere. On his way to work, digital ads blinked with discounts, limited offers, and buy now, pay later schemes that whispered to his curiosity. One evening, while scrolling through his favorite online store, he saw a pair of sleek wireless earbuds, shiny, futuristic, and on sale. His fingers almost clicked purchase, but something inside stopped him. He remembered his new promise to himself. He decided to try something different. He would wait for 24 hours before making any purchase that wasn't essential. Just one day to think it over. That night, as he lay in bed, he kept imagining how much he really needed those earbuds. By the next evening, the excitement had faded. The desire to buy had melted away like smoke, and the earbuds no longer seemed important. Alex smiled quietly, realizing how easily emotions control our wallets. From that day on, he followed the 24-hour rule strictly. Whenever a tempting deal appeared, he paused, waited, and asked himself if it added value to his life. Most of the time, the answer was no. This simple habit began saving him more money than any budgeting app ever could. It wasn't about denying himself pleasure. It was about reclaiming control over his impulses. And with every choice resisted, Alex felt stronger, more focused, and closer to the life he wanted to build. The 24-hour rule became his shield against impulsive spending and his silent teacher in patience and wisdom. Automate your savings. By the time another month rolled around, Alex had learned to control his impulses and recognize his spending patterns, but there was still one major problem. He wasn't saving consistently every time his paycheck arrived. He promised himself he would set some aside, yet by the end of the week, the money would somehow disappear into small expenses, rent, and daily needs. He realized that willpower alone couldn't fight human nature, so he decided to outsmart it. One Saturday morning, he sat at his desk with his laptop open, logged into his bank account, and created an automatic transfer system. From now on, the moment his salary landed, 20% would move straight into a separate savings account without him having to lift a finger. It was simple, invisible, and powerful. The first time it happened, Alex didn't even notice until a few days later when he saw his balance quietly growing in the background. He felt a strange mix of pride and relief for the first time. Saving wasn't a struggle or a decision. It was a habit that ran silently behind the scenes. The more he automated, the more peaceful he felt. The stress of constantly deciding what to save was gone, replaced by a steady rhythm of progress. It felt like building a secret tunnel to his future. Small deposits flowing every month toward something bigger. Over time, this system became his safety net. His quiet guardian, ensuring that even when life got chaotic, his savings continued to grow without fail. Alex finally understood that true discipline wasn't about constant control. It was about designing a system that made the right choice automatic. And with that realization, his financial life took a solid, unshakable turn toward freedom. Cut hidden costs by midsummer of 2025, Alex's finances were finally starting to show signs of life. His savings account had a respectable balance, and he felt proud of how far he had come. Yet one evening, while checking his bank statement, he noticed something odd. Small recurring charges kept appearing. $9.99 here, $14.99 there, for services he barely remembered signing up for. Curious, he began digging deeper, opening every email receipt, subscription list, and payment log he could find. What he discovered shocked him. Over the past year. He had been paying for multiple streaming platforms, a digital magazine he never read, an old software trial he had forgotten to cancel, and even an unused gym membership silently draining his balance. The realization stung. He was losing money not by choice, but by ignorance. That night, Alex took action. He opened a spreadsheet and listed every subscription he found, rating each by how much value it added to his life. One by one, he canceled the unnecessary ones, watching his list shrink and his confidence grow. Then he went a step further. He called his internet provider, negotiated a lower rate, and switched his phone plan to something smarter and cheaper. Within a week, his monthly expenses dropped dramatically. It was like cutting invisible chains that had quietly held him back. The feeling was liberating for the first time. Alex understood that saving money wasn't just about earning more or spending less. It was about paying attention, about not letting hidden costs steal his effort. He leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face, realizing that real financial growth often begins not with more income, but with eliminating the silent leaks that go unnoticed. From that day onward, Alex promised himself that every dollar he earned would have a purpose, and not a single cent would vanish without his permission. Cook more, spend less. As autumn arrived, the air in the city turned crisp, and Alex's life had begun to feel more balanced. His finances were improving, his savings were growing automatically, and he had eliminated most of his hidden expenses. Yet there was still one major leak in his budget that he had ignored: food. Every day he spent a small fortune on quick lunches, takeout dinners, and morning coffees from the cafe downstairs. It was convenient, it was tasty, but it was expensive. One weekend, while reviewing his monthly expenses, he realized he had spent nearly the same amount on food as on rent. The number made him pause in disbelief. That evening, Alex decided to try something new. He would start cooking at home. Even if he had to learn from scratch, he went to a local grocery store for the first time in months, walking through aisles filled with fresh vegetables, spices, and simple ingredients that felt strangely empowering. When he cooked his first meal, a simple pasta with garlic and herbs, it wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It smelled like effort, like control, like change. Over the following weeks, his kitchen slowly became his favorite space. He began to experiment with recipes, learned to meal prep for work, and found joy in creating something with his own hands. What started as a money-saving habit became therapy. Each meal cooked at home saved him not just dollars, but also stress and unhealthy habits. By the end of the month, his expenses had dropped dramatically, and his confidence soared. He realized that cooking wasn't just about saving money. It was about slowing down, taking charge, and finding satisfaction in simplicity. The sound of chopping vegetables, the aroma of simmering sauce, and the sight of his growing savings blended into one peaceful rhythm, reminding him that true wealth is not always found in the numbers, but in the choices we make every single day. Invest, don't just save. By winter of 2025, Alex had become more disciplined than ever. His savings account was growing steadily, and his expenses were under control. But one cold evening, as he looked at the balance on his screen, he felt a strange thought whisper in his mind. The number looked good, but it was just sitting there, doing nothing. It was safe but silent, like soldiers waiting in a camp with no orders. That night, Alex began reading about investing. He had always believed that investing was for the rich, for people who had large amounts of money to risk. But the more he learned, the more he realized how wrong he had been. Investing, he discovered, wasn't about luck or wealth. It was about time and consistency. He started small, opening a beginner-friendly investment app and buying tiny shares of index funds. His hands trembled a little when he made the first purchase. It felt unfamiliar but also thrilling. Over the next few months, Alex watched his money slowly begin to work for him. It was subtle, a few dollars growing into a few more. Yet the idea of his money generating more value while he slept fascinated him. He began to see every saved dollar not as something to protect, but as a worker he could assign a job to. He diversified his small portfolio, reading articles late at night, understanding risk, patience, and the power of compound growth. For the first time, he realized that saving alone could protect his present, but investing could build his future. It wasn't about gambling. It was about planting seeds in fertile soil and giving them time to grow. Each investment taught him something about trust, discipline, and long-term vision. As snow fell outside his window one quiet night, Alex smiled to himself, knowing that every small step he took today was quietly shaping the life he would live tomorrow. By quality, not quantity, as the new year of 2026 approached, Alex stood in front of his closet one morning, staring at rows of clothes, shoes, and gadgets that once felt like small trophies of success, but now looked like forgotten artifacts of impulsive choices. Most of them were worn out, broken, or rarely used. He realized that for years he had been chasing the illusion of value, mistaking more for better. That day, he made a decision that would redefine his relationship with money and possessions. From now on, he would stop buying cheap things that didn't last, and instead invest in fewer, better quality items that would stand the test of time. The first step came when his old sneakers finally gave up. Instead of buying the same inexpensive pair that wore out every few months, he researched and bought a durable, well-made pair that cost more but promised years of comfort. At first, it felt strange to spend more intentionally, but as days turned into weeks, he noticed something powerful. The more he focused on quality, the less he needed to buy. His spending dropped naturally, not because he was restricting himself, but because he was satisfied with what he had. His apartment began to feel lighter, cleaner, and calmer, surrounded by fewer things that actually served a purpose. Alex understood that buying quality was not about luxury. It was about respect. Respect for his hard-earned money, for his future self, and for the resources behind every product. This mindset quietly extended beyond his wardrobe into every part of his life. From the tools he used to the people he kept close, and even the habits he nurtured, quality over quantity became more than a financial strategy. It became a philosophy for living, one that taught him that true wealth doesn't come from owning more, but from owning what truly matters. Set clear goals by the spring of 2026. Alex had grown wiser with every decision he made. His savings were stable, his investments were growing, and his lifestyle had become more intentional. But somewhere deep inside, he felt that something was still missing. He realized that while he had learned how to manage money, he hadn't yet given it direction. It was like driving a car on a long road without knowing the destination. That night, he sat down with a blank notebook. A pen and a quiet mind, he wrote at the top of the page, "What am I really saving for?" The question lingered in the air, simple yet powerful. Slowly, he began to write. First, an emergency fund for peace of mind. Then a dream vacation to Italy that he had postponed for years. And finally, a down payment for a small house that he could one day call his own. Each goal felt personal, alive, and worth fighting for. He divided them into short-term, medium-term, and long-term targets, giving each one a timeline and a purpose. When he looked at the list, something inside him shifted. His savings no longer felt like restrictions, but like stepping stones leading him toward the life he wanted to build. Each dollar he saved now had meaning. Every sacrifice had a reason. And every choice became easier because he knew what it was for. Over the next few weeks, he pinned his goals on a corkboard above his desk and checked his progress weekly. Sometimes he failed, sometimes he exceeded expectations, but every small victory reminded him that direction mattered more than speed. For Alex, goal setting became a source of motivation, turning the abstract idea of saving into a story of purpose, hope, and growth. As he looked at the board one night before sleeping, he smiled quietly, knowing that money was no longer his master. It had become his ally, a tool that could turn his dreams into reality, one goal at a time. Reward yourself. Wisely, months had passed since Alex began his journey toward financial freedom, and by the end of 2026, his life looked completely different. His bank account was healthy, his investments were growing, and his daily habits had transformed him into a more mindful, disciplined person. Yet amid all this progress, he realized something important. Saving money wasn't supposed to feel like punishment. It was meant to create freedom, not take it away. One Friday evening, as he walked home after a long work week, he saw a small cafe glowing under the golden streetlights. For a moment, he stopped. Remembering how he used to spend money carelessly here every day, he smiled and decided to step inside, not out of impulse, but choice. He ordered his favorite drink and sat by the window, watching people rush by. It wasn't just a cup of coffee anymore. It was a quiet celebration of how far he had come. Alex had learned that rewarding himself didn't mean returning to old habits. It meant acknowledging progress without guilt. He began to schedule small, meaningful rewards after achieving financial milestones. A dinner with friends after reaching a savings goal. A short weekend trip after hitting an investment target. These small acts kept him motivated and reminded him that balance was just as important as discipline. Over time, this practice gave his journey warmth and sustainability, turning it from a strict routine into a fulfilling lifestyle. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks painted the sky outside his apartment window, Alex looked around his calm, organized home and smiled. He wasn't just financially stable. He was free. Every dollar he had saved, every habit he had changed, every decision he had made had led him to this peace. He raised his cup of coffee gently, whispering to himself that wealth wasn't about numbers. It was about control, contentment, and the courage to enjoy life responsibly. With that thought, Alex looked toward the future with quiet confidence, knowing that he had mastered not just the art of saving money, but the art of living wisely.